Chris Lockhart, he is the hero behind the hero on screen. If you're talking about business, at the top of the game, this is the guy to know. He has over 30 years of experience in the industry. The man's read over 60,000 scripts in his career. It's my good friend, Christopher Lockhart. Chris, I am so excited that you are here, sir.
What's up, Keith?
So to get going, kind of a context on the idea of this channel is I want to give actors and artists of all kinds, be it writers or anybody else, help with realizing that it's a marathon, not a sprint. You are in business for yourself, and how do we best go about that?
The cynical side of me often says that it is neither a sprint nor a marathon. It is a death march.
So going back, okay, you've read over 60,000 scripts in your career. Let's back up and let's go all the way for you to your aha moment where you were like, I want to be in this business, be it because you kind of started out in doing some acting, right? In theater.
Well, yeah, when I was in high school and junior high school, but yeah, it was sort of, that was my introduction into the arts. When I played the mayor in the third grade production of the Pied Piper of Hamelin, So, and that began a love of the arts. And it expanded and it went into very different avenues as I evolved.
Mm-hmm. And so how did you end up from there at the largest diversified talent agency in the world, finding scripts for Denzel Washington?
Well, everything's about who you know. And I was in New York. I really thought that I was going to be like an arts education teacher. I decided to get my master's degree because in order to teach at that time what was the New York City Board of Education, now it's called the Department of Education, but you would have to get a master's degree within X amount of years of teaching, I think 5 years. So I was like, I just graduated with a bachelor's degree. Why don't I just hop in and get a master's degree and just get it over with? And I've been doing a lot of writing, a lot of playwriting when I was in was an undergraduate, and somebody said, you can get a master's degree in playwriting. I was like, what? Like what goofy school would give a degree in playwriting? So at any rate, I ended up getting an MFA from NYU's Tisch School of the Arts in dramatic writing. And while I was there, I discovered screenwriting. And I did some internships, and I did an internship at Columbia Pictures where I was reading screenplays. And the old joke was I'd also done an internship at a theater where I was reading plays. And it just seemed like the people who worked for Columbia, they just seemed like they were living better lives than those theater types. The theater types were taking the subways, and the people at the studios were being driven to, like in car. It's like, So I just eventually ended up coming to Los Angeles to pursue a career in film. And I started out as a writer, and then just sort of serendipitously, I was offered a job at ICM, working for the co-president, who was also a very, very big talent agent. And he represented Denzel, and he represented Mel Gibson and Richard Gere and Michelle Pfeiffer. Like he discovered all of them, and he nurtured them, and he turned them all into movie stars. And I didn't think that was really a line of work that I wanted to do too long, but I was just kind of in a very weird place in my life. So I was like, let me just do this for a little while. 25 years later. And things have changed. Obviously that employer, he has since passed away. ICM no longer exists. It was just gobbled up by CAA. I went to William Morris. That no longer exists because that merged with Endeavor and became WME, which is where I've been since its inception. So, and still pretty much doing the same thing. And the job has evolved over the years. It's become more integrated in ways. In the beginning, it was much more isolating. I was really just sort of reading scripts, and now I've become really, much more integrated into the sort of overall process of things. And so it's just sort of evolution. Sometimes you kind of have to go like where fate pushes you a little bit, I think.
So let me ask this. You said inserted more into the overall process. All right. So for those that don't know, define said process.
All right, well, first of all, I should say that what I do at the agency is that I am the story editor. So my job is basically to find material for some of our A-list clientele. So I'm sort of like a matchmaker, or I'm like a realtor, where I'm trying to find the right property for my client. And so that entails now a lot of things that it didn't entail when I first started the job, because I really did sort of reinvent the job over the years. And so, for example, I will work with writers from the inception. So they have an idea. I was once at a restaurant right around the corner. One of my clients called while I was there and said, "Hey, what do you think about this idea?" And he pitched the idea, and we went back and forth, and then I helped him to develop the script. And I was there on the set. I was there in the editing bay. And, so I was there through the entire process. So I don't do that with all the projects, but I do that with some of them. And sometimes I'm asked to try to salvage a project. So maybe a project isn't going the way a client wants it to go, and then I'll give some notes with the client in mind to try to perhaps shepherd the script to be developed in a way that keeps the client happy. I'll do that in post-production. So if a client doesn't like the way the film ended up, its final cut, I might be sent in sort of as a creative emissary to try and find a cut that will make both the filmmakers happy, but also the client happy. So it's, I read scripts. I'm like a development executive, and I have some almost like being a producer as well, because there's some of those sorts of responsibilities. And so it's really evolved over the years, and that's what's really kept me engaged, because that's what's really interesting, because you learn so much, you learn so much. I was in the editing bay of a film, and who comes in to the room but Spike Lee. And the director invited him. And so I spent the entire day in a tiny little editing bay, with the director and the editor and Spike Lee. And I just sat back. Although I was brought in to consult, I was like, I'm in the presence of Spike. And I learned so much. I can't tell you how many times I just kind of grabbed my phone and I was like secretly recording some of the exchanges going on, which I still have. And but it was, it's like when you work with this caliber of people, I've consulted with Mel Gibson many times in the past, and just to hear the way his head works and the way he looks at material. When you work with these kinds of people like Denzel, you learn a lot. I'm always constantly learning, because they're right in it. They're right in it. They are tastemakers.
There are people out there that are starting out in the business that very well could be the next Mel or Clint Eastwood or Denzel or those kind of things. What would you say is the separating factor that gets people from, Joe Nobody to marquee name?
First of all, there can only be a few marquee names. And often you really understand, like when you talk to somebody, or even if you see their work, you understand why they are a marquee name. Only a few people, are going to reach that level. The majority of people are going to be journeymen. They're going to be working actors, working writers, working directors, but they're not going to be Spielberg, and they're not going to be Tom Cruise. And there's a reason that we say Spielberg and Cruise, and we only think of Spielberg or Cruise, because they are in many ways one in a million. So while I think it's wonderful to set your, sights as high as you possibly can, I just think, you already said it. It's about the work. It is about the work. It is about doing the work. You must do the work. You must do a lot of work. And you have to do good work, and then people have to see it. So it's just not good enough to do the work. Then, because, how many people have short films that maybe have great performances in them, but nobody's ever seen them? And maybe nobody will see them.
Right.
So it is about that as well. And oddly, although it's still very, very difficult to get eyeballs onto your project, there's so many more options today than there were 25 years ago, right? Look at the way we're communicating at this moment, right? There are these platforms where our works can now be distributed and potentially seen by millions of people, which of course didn't exist 25 years ago, 30 years ago. So, but it's really about doing the work. Too many people have delusions of grandeur. So many people, I can't tell you how many writers come up to me and say, Chris, this will be the best script that you've ever read. And I'm like, you're aware that, I read scripts by Charlie Kaufman and Aaron Sorkin. And
right.
This will be the best script that you've ever read. And I read it, and it's one of the worst scripts that I've ever read.
Yeah.
So where's that disconnect? How could this person believe that they truly had the best script when it's really not good at all? So this is about doing good work. You need to do good work. You need to have your head in the game and not up your ass. Because there's too much of that in this town. There's
so
a lot of talk, but not a lot of talent.
Right. Yeah. I remember it wasn't until I think it was my third script, that I actually felt like I kind of have a handle on this, right? As far as structurally, and all that stuff. But I remember the very first script I wrote, I was that guy. I wrote it in Word. I didn't even have a screenwriting program, and I was kind of formatting it and this is going to change cinema forever. Yes. Right.
I get it. We all get it, because we're all there. I also produce movies on the side, so it's like I get it. But at the same time, there needs to be some reality. Like, yes, I do feel like there needs to be a certain amount of like blinders on, because if you truly looked at this business the way it was, you probably wouldn't want to do it. So you have to be fueled by the dream, by the impossible dream, and that fuels you. The idea that you thought that was the greatest script ever written, that it was going to change cinema, is what motivated you to keep you going. And I think that's great. And we all feel that way about all of our projects.
Right.
But you still have to approach it with, like a modicum of reality.
Yes.
Because once you get out there now, you're outside of your head. Now you're in the real world. And so, yeah, it's really about balancing the dream and the reality.
That's so true. Now, would you say, I know it's a synergistic relationship, but would you say more times than not, the actor makes the script or the script makes the actor?
My experience has always been that everything makes the script, so
that's a great point. I like that.
It's like the whole idea of the script is just a blueprint, and I get a little bit of backlash sometimes. They're like, it's not, it is a work of art in of itself, and maybe it is, but the problem with that is that people are not writing scripts for scripts to be appreciated as they are. You are creating a script so it will evolve into something else, into a film. So when I look at scripts, I'm not always looking for a 10. I don't need a 10 script. Trying to find a 10 is very difficult. I'm like, if I can find a script that's a 7, and then you get Denzel Washington in it and a really good director, the movie is a 10. It actually makes my job a little easier,
Right.
But yeah, there are a lot of scripts that I've read that are sort of mediocre, and then you get good people in them, and they're better. I would say that I've also read very good scripts where I thought that it was miscast, or maybe not directed the way I had envisioned it in my head. And as a result, I didn't like the movie as much as I did the screenplay. So I think it can work both ways, but I would say more often than not, the movie is better than the script because of its actors, because of the direction, because of the cinematography, because of the costumes, because of the locations, because of the music, and so on and so on and so on. That's because that's what a movie is. It's not just the words on the page. It's so many other things. It is a collaborative art form. Right.
So, actors starting out, obviously it's a buyer's market. Everybody and their brother wants to do it. And a lot of times, most times, there is no choice over what you are given to use for auditions and that kind of thing. But if you get I've had the great good fortune to be involved with some really amazing indie projects. Given the opportunity, what would you say people should look for in a script?
I'm looking at screenplays for A-list actors, right? For Oscar winners, for those marquee names. And they do not represent the majority of actors, right? These are movie stars, and it's what is it? It's movie stars are actors, but not all actors are movie stars, right?
Yeah.
And so And so what I look for, I'm looking for very specific things for my clientele. As to what any individual actor is looking for, I think is really individual. They might be looking to pay their rent.
Right.
And so as a result, it doesn't matter, right?
Mhm.
The role doesn't matter. And by the way, there are plenty of A-list actors sometimes that have to pay the rent.
Right.
And they just went through a messy divorce, and so they're making one movie after the other, after the other, after the other. Sometimes just the fact that people want to eat is motivation enough to pick a role. For me, when I look at the material, I'm not looking at it for myself. So just because I like a screenplay, and I read a lot of scripts that, wow, I really, really like this, but it's not right for any of my people. So it's a pass.
Right.
And, but technically, the things that I'm looking for, I look at a script and I'm like, okay, let's look at the role for the actor, right? For the client. And, what is the character doing? Is he goal-oriented? Are the choices that the character makes in response to trying to achieve this goal interesting? Does the character change? Is the drama important enough that it changes the character, that they're different from the beginning to the end? A lot of my clients are very interested in looking for that arc, that transformational arc, right? Because that's something to play. So these are a few of the things that I look for. But then there's just other things that are practical. Like, did the actor already make a movie like this?
Right.
So it's like if Mel Gibson just made Ransom, he's probably not going to do Taken.
Right.
So
right.
So there's stuff like that, and then it gets even more practical. Like there's an edict from the actor that they don't want to film anything outside of Los Angeles, and if the movie's going to be shot in the Middle East, it's a pass. Right. Regardless of how good the script is. So there's so many things. I say if you're an actor, you should be acting. Yeah. And if you have the pick of the litter, then you will make these choices based on whatever your preferences are. But if you don't have the pick of the litter, then work. Say yes to everything and work. Because the more people you work with, the more people you meet, the wider the net that you cast, and the more likely you are to work again in the future.
I believe it was Forrest Whitaker, and he was, auditioning and just not getting cast, and he was worried about, I got to pay my rent, I got to do this, and his head was in those places, and so he just made the decision. It was like, this audition might be the only opportunity I get to practice my craft, right? And so many times when I think actors are coming to an audition, they, and there's time constraints, there's this, there's that, you got to be good at making quick choices and doing that kind of thing. But his point was, this might be my only opportunity to practice my craft. So I am going to practice my craft, and I'm going to forget about it. And if they want me, great. And if not, great. And he started doing the prep work he needed to do. He started having his head space in the right space when he did the audition. And he's Forrest Whitaker now, right?
It's really about you, right? It's great. You go to graduate school, you get an MA, you get an MFA. That's not going to open up any doors for you unless you open the doors. yes, you can potentially use that as a way to leverage the door opening, but it's really up to you. And it's what you do with it, because it's not going to do anything by itself. Nobody out here ever asked me, oh, where'd you go to graduate school? Or say, what, you have an MFA? Nobody cared. Nobody cared at all. At all. Now, does that mean that I regret getting an MFA? Not at all.
Right.
Because as I told you earlier, I needed a master's degree anyway because I thought I was going to teach. And actually, in the long run, it has paid off because I've been able to teach on the college level with an MFA. That's probably one of the best reasons to get an MFA, is because you want to teach. But you don't need an MFA necessarily to work. You can still do the work. You can take that 2 years or 3 years that it takes to get an MFA and accomplish a whole lot on your own. But other people need the structure, need the discipline. It is a way to network and make friends for life.
Right.
Until they win Oscars and then they want nothing to do with you. But again, like everything is so individual. There's just no right way to do anything in this business. Right. Everything is just about what works and doesn't work for you. And just because something worked for her, it doesn't mean that it will work for you. You have to find your own way in.
Right.
And that's both a blessing and a curse.
Right. Well, let me ask this: since you are at the largest diversified talent agency in the world, just pull back the curtain for me for a second on what does it take for the team at William Morris Endeavor to look at a person and go, we want to rep them. Not only, or should I more specifically say, take a chance on them. Is that even a thing at William Morris? Or is it they've already gotten to a point where we're going to take you and move you globally?
Look, I'm not a talent agent, right? So thankfully, I don't have to deal with any of that stuff because to me, that would be very stressful. Yeah. But I would say, not just where I work, but at any agency at all. But if you want to target the great big ones like ours and CAA and let's say UTA to a lesser degree, again, I would say that it is an individual choice, right? And there is no handbook that is written that says these are the things that you must consider or blah, 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 blah. Every agent or a manager would make the decision based on what they believe they can do for this person. Like, for example, an agent might say, undoubtedly, this person is very talented, but I don't believe that I could help this person. I think maybe this other agent might be better suited for this person.
So is it an agent by agent thing, or is it, hey, commercial, voiceover, theatrical, all have to, is there a team like decision that's made, or is it
big agencies? The bigger agencies tend to work as a hive. And so typically, because everybody at a big agency is working for the client, then generally speaking, the agency has to agree that this is a person that we all want to work with. So, that's often the way the agencies work. It's not like a smaller agency where one agent can say, I want to work with this person, because they don't have 1,000 different departments in which they are going to try to enable this client to succeed, right? Like, yes, they want this client to do voiceovers. They want this client to produce. They want this client to create a line of sneakers. They want this client to write books and do podcasts. And so, it's often at least within a department. So if let's say an agent is potentially interested in bringing on a new writer, let's say, and they might consult with other agents within their lit department to see how they feel, because it was CAA that created the whole team element of agents, right? When they wanted to make sure that clients didn't leave the agency if an agent left, or if a client had a falling out with an agent. If there were a team of agents working with the client, then if one agent on that team left, let's say, there were still other agents who had a relationship with the client to keep them on board. That was something that CAA invented. And so the bigger agencies definitely tend to do that now. So there needs to be a little bit of a consensus in regards to that. I always say, and this is sort of glib, it's like, a very popular question is, how do I know I'm ready for an agent? And my glib answer is, because they come looking for you. And that's especially with the big agencies, and because the bigger agencies, they really only represent the very, very top part of the industry. CAA, WME, UTA, they represent probably the top 25%. And, a place like WME probably represents the top 7%, of the business. People like Scorsese and The Rock. So it's these agencies are like, they're like getting into Harvard and Yale. And so you often have to ask yourself, like, okay, is my SAT good enough to get into CAA? And it just may not be. So maybe then you have to go to the UCLA of agencies, which is great. And then as your SAT goes higher and higher, then you can eventually transfer to a different organization. But the higher, the bigger agencies just tend to represent the more successful clients, because the bigger agencies have bigger overhead. So it's just sort of practical stuff. So I always tell writers or actors, don't necessarily put all of your energy into trying to, get into CAA. I would just say, if you can find a manager who really loves you, because that's the key, by the way. It's not even, for the most part, like when you talk about the super agencies, it's a different story, right? Because they can package, they can create opportunities. I mean, that's what the big agencies do. They create opportunities for their clients. So when there isn't anything for the client to do, the agency will create stuff for them to do. Often stuff that the client never even would have thought of doing, that then can amass, no exaggeration, tens, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars worth of income for that person. And that's what the bigger agencies do. But all in all, it's really about the agent, or it's about the manager, rather than the structure around them. And again, I'm excluding the bigger places only because it is that sort of that hive mentality that really pushes people into the stratosphere. But for the most part, most people are just trying to break in. Most people at the start, they just want to make a living. Like, I just want to make a living. I want to like collect my SAG pension. Like, I want to make sure that I get my benefits every year. Like this kind of thing. And so just getting an agent or a manager, somebody that really believes in you and will work with you, is more than enough. And if they're good, they'll have a relationship with those super agencies, which means that they can at the very least pitch you to them. Doesn't mean that they're that he's trying to shop you there as a client, but maybe into one of their projects, maybe into a meeting with one of their directors. So that's what it's really about. You want somebody who's passionate about you, but you also want somebody who is connected. That's really important. And looking at their client list, and if their client list is a bunch of people that you've never heard of, or they don't work that much, then you have to sort of sum it up and say, yeah, well, maybe I'm the one that's going to be different, but maybe you're not.
Right.
And maybe that person isn't the best for you. I think what a lot of new artists do is they rush into representation. Like the first rep that shows any interest in them, they sign with.
Right.
And that's not always the best thing.
So let me ask this. What do you see, even, I guess, even A-listers, what do you see actors get wrong?
Honestly, I think a lot of them just don't pick good material. Now again, I'm looking at a much higher level. I'm looking at actors who perhaps have a choice of what they can do. I guess in theory, all actors have a choice in what it is that they can do, because you can always say no to anything.
Right.
But it's like an actor doesn't need a starring role to steal a movie, right? Like you
7
can leave
minutes
it
of
in
screen
7
time,
minutes,
Academy Award,
and you get an Oscar. You can leave a last, especially, and that's especially true on film, right? Especially true on film, where you can leave a lasting impression. But I do think that often people are not choosing very good material.
I was standing one time in a casting office in LA. A friend of mine worked close by, and I remember seeing this wall of headshots. It was actually 3 walls. They were stacked about as high as my waist, 3 deep, around 3 walls of this room. And I was like, how does anybody ever get to the top of that? And so for me, as an artist, when I moved out there, like I said, it kind of hit me that it's show business, and business is the bigger word. And that's kind of when I started writing.
You sort of have to go with what you're passionate about. The thing is this, is it right? Like you write scripts with the intention of making them, often like yourself,
right?
Right? Like you're going to produce it, you're going to direct it. A lot of writers don't do that because that's not sort of their avocation, which is fine. I would like they just want to write a screenplay, and they want to have other people produce it and direct it. And so the thing is that if you choose to take that route, you may not get anything done, as opposed to if you sort of take the bull by the horns and set out to try to do it yourself. The thing is that just about everybody who starts out to produce a movie has nothing, right? Like they have nothing in the beginning, absolutely nothing. And they build it from there.
Right.
It's not like everybody's a billionaire and they just write checks. No, most filmmakers are struggling and probably don't have a dime to their name, and they have to figure it out. And so I don't necessarily recommend people do that because it can lead to bankruptcy and divorce and suicide. But like if you have the mettle, METTLE, for it, then why not? That doesn't mean that you have to direct it. You can go out and find a person who like, if you can't direct or you don't want to direct, but perhaps trying to make your own movie, or at the very least your own content, right? Because the thing is that you cannot break into the stratosphere. You cannot become a marquee name without content, right? You have to produce content. So again, if you're an actor, you must act. If you're a director, you have to direct. I meet so many people who tell me they're directors, and I'm like, well, what have you directed? And they're like, well, I'm in pre-production on something. And I'm like, how can you be a director but yet you haven't directed anything? To me, that or like, I'm a producer, but they haven't produced anything. People are very, they're very loose with these terms. Look, like, if you have written a script, you're a writer. If you're acting, then you're an actor. But in order to be a director, you need to direct. In order to produce, you need to produce, and not just go through the motions of it.
Right. And speaking of that, that's part of why I started Southeast SHOWREELS, because that battle early on, it's obviously changed now with the whole advent of digital everything. But when I was coming up, it was cost prohibitive to go shoot a short scene or a short film, really, to unless you just had a bunch of money to throw at it. And now the very first step is getting cast in something. Woohoo, you did it, great. Now you got to pursue that footage, and producers aren't going to let go of that before it's released.
Right.
So sometimes you're following up and doing that stuff for 3 years before it comes out. So that's part of why I started doing this. One, to kind of especially during COVID, have some fun kind of creative outlet, and two, to create these things that my aim anyway is for them to look like they are from something bigger.
Do you know something that when I saw some of those reels that you did, because so often you see these reels and they look like exactly what they are. Somebody did it like in their living room, and it looks bad. Right. And yours are really terrific. They look like they were taken from a bigger movie.
Well, that's my goal. And,
I just did a commercial for you. Look, I
know, right?
I just did a commercial for you. Call now. Don't wait. Tell them Chris sent you.
Come on back now, you hear?
Like used car salesman.
That's awesome. Yeah, but the point is it being, I want, producers or casting agents to look at them and go, "What's this from?" And they can just say, "It's from a short that I did," and move on, right? Yeah. So, anyway, Chris, I really appreciate you taking the time to just sit and give some, clues and some insight into the bigger picture, and that's my heart in this. Because I know when I was coming up, if I was the third extra on the left in the scene, as an actor, I'm like, this scene's about me, right? I don't care what they're saying over there. This is my scene.
That's right.
And I'm trying to, I've had these realizations over the years, and I want to, have actors and artists kind of expand their sight into the business piece of it. So I really appreciate it.
And I think especially now, Keith, we all seem to be walking in the dark with our hands in front of us, because we have entered into new territory, not only because of COVID and which has made everything so so unpredictable. But also, we're now in the era of streaming, which has really changed so many things. Changed the structure of the deal, changed distribution. It's changed so much, right? But the beautiful thing about it is that we're sort of all at the beginning again in many ways. And yes, some of us are a little bit farther ahead, but everybody in this business dreams. They're all dreamers. And by the way, everybody's frustrated. Right. It doesn't matter who you are. Even somebody like Tom Cruise has a dream project that he wants to do that for whatever reason he cannot get made.
Right.
So it's like we are all in this together. It is a great big boat. Maybe sometimes it feels like the Titanic, but we are all shipmates. Yeah. And so I think people should take a little bit of solace in that, and knowing that you're not the only one who's frustrated. Just keep doing the work. Love the work that you do. Love the fact that you do the work, right? Like for me, I love the work. I love doing the work. And then if it doesn't result in anything in the end, I'm okay with that. And by the way, the majority of my work results in nothing. But I love the work, so it never feels like failure to me. Amen. It never feels like a waste of time.
Yes.
Because everything that I do helps to educate me, inform me, inspire me, and keep me going. And that's really the way it should be. So really worship the work. That's what it's about. Do the work.
That's awesome.
That's what I preach. All right.
That's right. Preach, brother.
Preaching.
Thank you so much.
All right. Give my best to Emily and the kids.
I'll do it. Take care, bud.
All right. Bye-bye.